It's not just my voice. It's the voices
of the people,
of the suffering. The voice was Black Lives Matter. And that voice spread throughout the whole world. Now it's, what do you want? And that's the kind of, I guess that's what I would like to hear, is what do the African Americans want to happen? To feel like not only that the voices are being heard, but to feel safe.
Right.
Because what I hear is that African Americans in America do not feel safe. Yeah, so for me, it's like we have a movement now, right? And it's all across America. And not only is it felt in America, it's felt in England. Like a lot of my friends in England, they got Black Lives Matter. You know, they're realizing that, you know, we've been oppressed in European countries, and now is the time to talk about it. So it is an African American issue, but it's also a Black English man's issue, which I was born in England. So I know what the oppression is there. I remember as a child, 7 years old, walking home, being called a nigger and being spat at. So I know how they feel. Then I see Black Lives Matter in Africa. And so I'm like, well, wait a minute, that's the motherland. Why are they saying that Black Lives Matter? What kind of oppression are they going through? So what I'm realizing is that in this world, Black people do not feel safe, and they do not feel heard, and that there's an oppression that's happening. And for me, I got a taste of that on my own. I won't go into the details of how this occurred, but I'll say exactly what occurred. And what occurred was, someone said something about me, and they called the cops. The cops came out, and instead of asking questions, they saw a Black man with dreadlocks. And I was in fear mode, because I know when cops show up, it's not a good thing if you're a Black man. And I remember laying down in the grass in submission. But I also remember crying out, because I know that an injustice was going to happen. And I was cuffed. And in some sort of a scuffle or something, my eye got split open and there was blood all over the cop car. And they had to take me to the emergency room to stitch my eyelids back and do head CTs to make sure that there was no internal bleeding going on. And during this time, I had a concussion. Now, as a nurse, I know that they should have had like a neurologist come in and see like if my confusion was because of the contusion. But instead, they put me in a psych ward against my will. And I remember having a hard time even putting clothes on. But nobody asked the question, why? They just saw a Black man and this fits, he's crazy, and this is a fitting environment for him. But it wasn't. I'm a guy who has lobbied bills in Sacramento, lobbied bills in Washington, D.C. I've never been in trouble. When I've heard people say, the cuffs are too tight, I felt that for the first time in my life 4 weeks ago. The cuffs were too tight. But my freedom was gone based upon someone's accusation. And feeling that myself made me realize that I cannot be the underground man that tries to do things underground. That I have to have a voice now and say my piece. And I appreciate the opportunity that you both have given me to say my piece, because I feel that I can understand the movement in a different way. It's not people just making noise. It's people crying out. And the disturbance that you see in the protests are people crying out. Now, don't get me wrong. I understand that there is some infiltration going on to make the protests look terrible. I understand that there's special interest groups that are in there and they're probably profiting somehow off of this. I get that. But when the mud settles, what you see is pain. What you see is suffering. And this suffering is epigenetic suffering, meaning that it's been passed down from generation to generation. From the time that the slaves were put on those ships to this day is an injustice. And yeah, has things got better? In a way, but not truly. It has not truly gone away. Now, I've heard people say, if you stop talking about it, it will go away. But I don't believe that, because it was in my face. I felt it firsthand. I felt the cuffs being too tight. And I felt not having a voice. So people who say if you stop talking about it, it will go away, I do not believe that at all. If you stop talking about it, it would only spread more. So how do you fix the problem? By understanding the other side. Now, what I believe happened is that in the county in which this happened, which was like Quintyn, San Bernardino County, I'm not sure exactly which one, but I'll say San Bernardino for lack of knowledge, or Quintyn, let's say both. What I think has happened is that the cops are overworked. They're working too many shifts. And I believe if there's mental illness in cops, let's say that a cop has PTSD, then his badge would be in question. How is he going to provide for his kid? So this cop has to, live a life where he's working so much, he's being exposed to constant trauma, and then supposed to be mentally okay. So what I believed happened is that when the officer came out and he saw me, he probably had post-traumatic stress disorder. And he went into this berserk mode. And he hurt me in this mode. But after things had calmed down, I could see the sorrow in his eyes when I asked him about his ancestors. And when I started questioning him about things that would mean something to him, that he saw that I was not a threat, not to myself or to anybody else. So he felt a part of the injustice. Now, I haven't asked for the tapes yet, but I will ask for the tapes, and then I'll give them to you guys to put something together so you guys have it. But the tapes will definitely paint the picture of what I'm saying. And the reason why I know the cop was sorry was because he started to help me. When I was thirsty, he made sure that I had water. When I needed to go to the bathroom, he released the cuffs. And eventually, he adjusted them so they weren't so tight. And he said to me that he was going to make a suggestion that they put rubber on the inside of these metal cuffs. That to me tells me that he was sorry. And I believe he has an undiagnosed mental illness that he can't come forward about because maybe his badge might be taken away. I don't know what happens in the cop world. I don't. But I don't believe that the guy who hurt me was a bad character. I believe he was overworked. And when we're talking about overwork, I think that the majority of working Americans probably feel overworked, working multiple jobs, or having to work overtime just to try and make ends meet. So the question is, if we did a vital sign check on America, how many people will have mental illnesses because of the capitalist society that we live in? Now, not just America now. Let's talk about all of Europe. Let's not talk about just Europe. Let's talk about Australia. Let's talk about everywhere. The whole globe has gone sick with money. And I think that's the heart of the problem. Money rules in this world where love should be. And how do you fix that? And now we have COVID-19. COVID-19 is the biggest threat to this corporate world. Now kids are home with their parents doing homeschool. And now people are home doing work. Now, I do think that there are going to be more mental illnesses because of all the mandates and everything that we have to follow to stay safe. And like for me, I came back from California and then I had to be locked down in my house. And yeah, that was like pushing me to the limits there because I couldn't like go to the beach and kind of like do what I normally do to kind of, you know, let my sorrows go, you know. But I did find my voice and it's beating this drum and singing. And that's what I do now, is I sing and I beat this drum. And I remember this lady had commented on one of my posts saying, I couldn't stop crying. And for me, it was the greatest compliment because that was the purpose. The purpose was to say, I'm in pain. Can you feel me? And she heard the sound. She could hear it. And it wasn't just my pain, but it's the pain of the world. Everyone is suffering, not just a few. You see, it's not just African Americans that are suffering. There's white Americans that are suffering too. When you have a system built on money, it does not take care of the fundamental needs of people. It only takes care of the top. And the top have mental illness too, by having too much. The original currency was empathy. And what I mean by that is, when we lived in tribes, and your brother said to you, I need to build a house, you would say, come on, let's do it. And when you needed to build a house, your brother would say, hey, don't do all that by yourself. I'm gonna help you. That was the original currency exchange, was empathy, not money. Now we've replaced empathy with money. And it's hard to do an exchange now without it. Do you hear that? It's hard to do exchange without it. But we still have remnants of it, right? Like if your mom asked you for something, you're not gonna say, hey, I hear what you're saying, Mom, but that's gonna have to cost $110. You're gonna say, sure, Mom, let me take out the trash for you. I can see you cook this meal. This is the least thing I could do. There's still remnants of that empathy exchange. But that used to be the original currency. And when tribes, like, imagine this scene, right? You live in a tribe and you decide to go on a journey just to wander. And as you're wandering, you're leaving the hustle and bustle of your tribe until eventually you don't hear it anymore as you go into the woods. And as you keep going, if you hear a sound, you know you found another people, another culture that does something differently. The way they beat the drums is a little different than they do back home. I wonder what I could learn from these people. But we don't do that now. We don't do that anymore. We don't wonder about other people. We just wonder about ourselves and how we can make ourselves better and greater. And I'm not just saying that as a blanket statement, as if I am excluded. I am included in that, because that's my conditioning too. Hey, I'm sick too. But it's when you realize that you're sick, is when you seek the doctor. And there's no other doctor than Jah, or God, or Allah, or whatever you want to call him. Because God is outside of this whole complex. And when you call on him, he will answer out of love. Because that's the original currency. And if we can go back to that, if we could go back to that, then the world will be a better place. But how do you let go of your possessions and your gold and all the things that you've made from money? How do you say no more to that? That question, I don't know. But I do know the answer lies with the people.
It's intense, man, just seeing all those things that you had to go through and, having to experience that, man. I'm glad that you're okay, and I'm glad that you're alive to be able to say this.
I think I'm a better man for it, I think sorrows are necessary to really bring change, If it wasn't for the terrible things that have happened to the African American community, the voice wouldn't have been as loud. And I am sorry for all the fallen people. I'm sorry for it. I'm sorry for the bloodshed. But this has been going on since Abel, all the way till now. And it needs to stop. Because we can't take it. So it wasn't jail, it was a psych ward, but I was held against my will, okay? And I was on a hold for 3 days. And 2 of those days, I had a concussion. And how I know that is because when someone gave me instructions, I couldn't understand what they were saying. And so I know it looked to the doctor that, oh, okay, this guy is mentally ill. But no, I had a concussion. And after a few days, and my wits came back to me, and there was an experience that I had before my wits came back. But I'll leave that for another day. But there was an experience that was very vivid and real to me that was the catalyst which restored my mind and my thinking and my reasoning. And what I noticed was the nurses and doctors all had masks on, but we who were in the psych ward had none. And they were bringing people in from prisons that were COVID-ridden, and they couldn't put them in there anymore. I remember seeing people with teardrops down their eyes, tattooed teardrops. I remember one guy, I asked him for a Bible, and he couldn't give me the Bible without ripping pages out of it and shoving it in his pocket. And I mixed with those people. And the staff felt bad because they could tell that my character did not fit what this place was about. And so I asked questions. Why do we not have a mask? And you know what the answer was? Sir, can we give you a mask? And I said, look, I'm not asking for a mask for myself. I'm asking about the injustice that's happening within sight of this hospital. We're being lumped as one, and you're wearing masks when you're dealing with us. So if you're wearing masks dealing with us, shouldn't we all have masks on? Why are we being separated? As if it doesn't matter if we have COVID. It only matters if you have COVID. And when I started asking questions like that, or I started asking for my patients' rights, that's when the hospital system got scared. And I had a certain date in order to have a hearing about what was going on inside of this county hospital. And an hour before I could say my piece, they had got me a voucher. They had called the taxi and they sent me home. Now, there was a lot of injustice that I saw when I was in there, and I spoke up about every single one. And I think once they realized the kind of character that I had, that they realized that this was not a fitting place for me at all. And it wasn't a fitting place for me from the beginning when the cop arrested me. So it should have never happened. What should have happened is that there should have been a dialogue between me and the cop before he took my freedom away. But like I said, I believe that he may have had a mental illness himself, and he acted out of whatever was going on for him, his circumstance.
Like I said, I'm glad you're alive because of that.
Thank you.
I mean, like that's
Thank you. And I could have lost my life really easily, or just been kept in there indefinitely. Who knows?
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. So going on into what's going on with COVID-19. So could you elaborate on like things about what the Native Americans you were explaining to me about?
So 2008, there was a big fire in Temecula. And I had volunteered to help out because I'm a nurse, and I wanted to volunteer to help out, with the native tribes. And they were being housed in schools. And as I started talking to them, and they spoke Spanish, but I was able to kind of Tienes dolor, tienes calambres, kind of, use a little Spanglish, I think they call it, to try and get my way through. And basically what was communicated to me was that the river, which was their only source of water, was making them sick. And they had boils and things on their faces and headaches and all kinds of stuff. And they were blaming it on the river, the agua, the water that they were drinking. And to me, it was the first time I ever could hear or know that there could be populations of people in America that have no running water and have little access to food. You say United States of America, you see New York, you see hustling and bustling cities, you see LA, you see Detroit, you see these things. But there's a forgotten people, the original people who were here, who have suffered for over 400 years, are still suffering. Still. Now, I don't know if most African Americans have access to running water through pipes, but I would assume so. But there's a people in America that do not have access to running water, and they've been given lands that they can't farm. That is the greatest injustice in America. The indigenous people are forgotten. Now, don't get me wrong. There are certain tribes that are given certain privileges and certain monies and whatnot. But if it's not all of them, it doesn't matter. It needs to be every single one. Every single one of them. That's justice. Not just the ones that make noise. Because you got to understand the culture. There are some that won't make the noise. You know, I got this, this is a didgeridoo. And right here, this is from the Lakota in Indians. And I bought this from Deborah Anderson, who is the daughter of John Anderson, who was in the band Yes. And I bought this from her shop. And it just reminds me that I'm not the only one suffering. That the world is suffering. And there's a few people that are benefiting, and there's many who are suffering. And I think that this pandemic, there's a lot of theories about it. There's some groups of people that believe in it, some groups of people who don't believe in it. There's so much fragmented information. So what I really want to talk about is that I've heard reports that COVID is pretty much taken over these reservations. And there's not much being done by the Americans to help. It's almost like they're on their own, so to speak. And the question is that I understand right now that most world's governments are having a hard time dealing with this pandemic. Our technology is not advanced enough to deal with the reality of COVID. So they're scrambling. And this is the time for noble characters to stand up and to help. Don't just sit there and criticize your government, saying, oh, this over here, and oh, this over here. It's so easy to do that. But why can't people say, how can I help? Because that needs to be the question. Not pointing and saying this and this and this. We need to say, how can we help? And I believe that we need to start looking into natural medicines again. There's lots of knowledge out there now. There's lots of studies out there now. And I believe that these are the times where the indigenous people need to be in touch with their indigenous medicines that they've used for thousands of years. And I have a friend and researcher who's been researching mushrooms. And I would like to invite him on this interview to talk about his research and what he's found to be true.
Let's get him on the call, man.
All right.
Aaron?
Hey, how you doing, Adam?
Doing great. How are you doing?
Good. So I'm inviting you on the interview to talk about, first of all, to introduce yourself, and also to talk about your research on mushrooms and just natural medicines that you've found to have been effective against respiratory viral diseases.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, my name is Adam Iyaman, and I've been doing a lot of research and harvesting of particularly one mushroom that's very interesting. It's called Garicon. It's also been referred to as the elixir of long life by European peoples, and it's also used by Native Americans for treating respiratory issues like tuberculosis and viral infections like smallpox and influenza A and B. It's been known as a cure-all in Europe, meaning that almost anything you have, it will give you benefits from. But I've been combining the agarikon with a bunch of different mushrooms that not only help similar things, but also should help almost anything that should be affecting your body. I have turkey tails, which boost your immune system, and they have anti-carcinogenic properties to them too. They've been well researched for their anti-carcinogenic properties, and they're one of the most common mushrooms in the world. I put rishis in my my mix. They modulate your immune system, and they've been shown to significantly prolong lifespans in nematodes and in lab settings. I put reishi in there. It modulates your immune response, and sorry, the artist conch in there. It's anti-turmeric, anti-carcinogenic. It has antibacterial properties and anti-fibrotic properties. And then another important mushroom that goes in is lion's mane. And lion's mane's been shown to reduce inflammation. It lowers people's anxiety, and it has a major effect on improved cognitive function. So I mix all these together, and from what I've seen, it instantly changes people's health and their outlook.
Now, I remember you saying that you, your mom was sick.
Yeah, my mom started getting a sore throat, and she started feeling lethargic, and I gave her her nose started running, and I gave her my tincture, and within within an hour, she was feeling like she had no effects.
Wow.
The runny nose went away, and she was able to like go play with my kids and stuff.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm excited to receive my package from you. And the reason why I want your package is that, you know, I definitely want to make sure that there are medicines here for us in Hawaii, because we live in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, and it could be easy to forget about us.
Right. Definitely. You know, we don't know what's going on with the world right now, and it's important to have things that will prolong your health.
Yeah. Well, Adam, thank you so much for joining us on the call and explaining us about, you know, the mushrooms that you're using and what they're specifically for. And I appreciate your contribution to the world.
I appreciate yours, Aaron. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. Love you, man. Bye.
Yeah, I love you too, man.
Oh, really interesting character, man.
Yeah, so he's like a brainiac. If you give him any problem, he'll just work on it. And so he's a guy that saw a problem, COVID-19, and has come up with a solution.
Right.
And that's what we need. We need to have people stop the pointing and start pointing in their brain and saying, okay, what can I do to help?
Right.
Okay. All right. So I have a djembe here. It's an African drum. So definitely want to say enough respect to all my African drummers out there in Africa, England, America, wherever you are. Thank you. The minute that I found this instrument, I could play it, so I know it's in my DNA somewhere. And so I would like to play it for you guys as a closing blessing. And when I play the drum, I play it to my God. The tetragrammaton, the YHWH. I believe it's my ancestral instrument. And when I play it to, and that is my pronunciation of God. So we have the tetragrammaton, the YHWH, and because we are human, we want to pronounce it and label it something. So there's this, you know, Yahweh or Jehovah, or we just want to name it. But if you listen carefully to the sound that your breath makes, it makes the sound of his name. That's what I believe the name of God is. And I believe is written in Scripture, let everything that has breath praise. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, anything else you want to say over here?
Other than I love you. And, you know, this isn't about a black man standing up. It's about the world standing up. Each and every one of you standing up for what you believe in. And I know that you believe in love because it's what your moms taught you, or at least what they were supposed to. And it's about the hum. I notice how moms hum to their little kids. They just hum them to sleep. The hum doesn't come from the voice, it comes from the nose. I think that's all I got. All right, guys, I've made my choice. This time I'm voting for Joseph. I think he'll do a better job at running any country than any man, because this guy tells no lies. All right, Joseph, here. Tell them a little bit of your truth. See? I don't see any lies in that. When I look at his tail, it waggles. I know he's telling me the truth, because I could see it in his tail. He's happy. This is what he wants. He's not telling me a lie. So I vote for Joseph, my little lamb, because I see truth. I see peace. I see happiness in his tail. See? He can't lie. It's not in his face, but it's in that tail. There's a moment. When that moment hits, there it is. There it is again. Yep, I got my guy. I'm voting for this guy, because he tells no lie. All right, Joseph. That's your campaign. Hopefully it will get to the people in time.